Ain't no ghost, just greedy bastards dressed like devils. That's what Elias said right before the mountain swallowed everything in fire and blood. This is the true story of a cattle drive that turned into a massacre, and the cursed mountain that hid a gold mine behind centuries of lies. True Wild West Stories invites you to ride along as we uncover the chilling truth behind the legend. Hit play and hold on tight. Black Ridge stood like the jagged spine of something ancient, its black silhouette slicing the sky as the sun bled out over the horizon. Dust swirled around the cattle, thick and choking, casting the whole valley in a fiery haze, the kind of red that whispered of blood, not just sunset. Elias McCord sat stiff in the saddle, eyes squinting beneath the brim of a sweat-stained hat. His jaw clenched like it had been carved from the very rock that loomed ahead. Behind him, Reuben Doyle spat into the dirt, voice rasping through yellowed teeth. "That there's Black Ridge. They say the soul of the Black Crow waits up there. Ain't no man come back clean if he comes back at all." "Cut the shit, Reuben," Caleb Hurst snapped, reining in beside him. "Ain't no ghost up there, just wind and stone and old wives' piss stories." Reuben gave a thin grin, eyes locked on the dark line of the mountain. "Tell that to the Apache. They got stories go back further than your daddy's boot leather. Gold up there, yeah, but the kind that bites back." Micah Boone didn't say a word. He never did unless it mattered. He just rode along the flank, watching the herd like a man watching the weather, with patience and the quiet sense that trouble always comes eventually. They made camp near a dry wash where the wind funneled sharp and cold. The cattle shifted, uneasy. Tents didn't go up, just bedrolls and fires. Elias didn't allow for comfort, not in country like this. Coffee boiled bitter in a dented pot, and Reuben's voice coiled through the smoke like a rattler. "You ever hear the one about the 3 miners found with their guts pulled out like laundry?" he said, stirring beans with a hunting knife. "Claimed the gold was alive. Like the mountain itself didn't want to give it up." "Jesus Christ," Caleb muttered. "Reuben, if I wanted to hear drunk ghost stories, I'd head back to Dusty Creek and pay a whore to moan 'em at me." Reuben just chuckled and tossed another log on the fire. "Suit yourself. But when that mountain stares back at you, don't come crying to me." Elias cut in, voice like gravel in a tin cup. "We're not here for fairy tales. We push through the valley come morning. No detours, no digging. We don't stop." The fire crackled. Somewhere in the herd, a steer let out a low, panicked bawl. Later that night, when the stars hung low and thick like dust motes frozen in time, Jonah Pike took first watch. The kid was green, sure, but eager. Eager got men killed out here, but it was also how they learned. He walked slow among the cattle, hand on the butt of his pistol, like he thought the darkness might test him. It did. There was a sound, faint, like metal on stone. A hush, too clean for wind. Jonah turned, squinted into the ridgeline. Nothing, just rocks and blackness. He stepped closer, boots crunching gravel. And then he was gone. No scream, no struggle. Just the empty night and the sudden stop of footsteps. By the time Caleb noticed, the fire was low. The cattle had gone tight, bunched like sheep under a storm. Elias stood, rifle in hand, eyes hard. "Where's the kid?" he asked. No one answered. Micah pointed to the edge of the bluff. "Tracks," he said. "But they just stop." They found Jonah's hat near the drop. No blood, no signs of a fall. Just that hat sitting there like someone had placed it, gentle. Reuben backed away, eyes wide, voice hoarse. "Shit, the curse. It started." The wind howled across the ridge, and the fire sputtered like it was choking on the truth. The sun hadn't even cleared the ridge when the crows began their frenzy. Black wings tore through the pale morning mist, squawking like damned souls, circling low over the dried creek bed that sliced the valley in two. The air smelled coppery, raw, like a butcher's block left out in the heat. Caleb Hurst stood at the edge of the water, boots sunk in mud, jaw clenched so tight a vein bulged at his temple. "God damn," he muttered, voice thick. The stream was barely a trickle now, but enough to carry something foul downstream. Blood marbled the water, swirling in oily red tendrils. Micah Boone crouched by the bank, fingers brushing reeds slick with dew and rot. He didn't speak, just plucked something from the mud and held it up between thumb and forefinger. A rusted shell casing. 30 to 30, he said simply. Caleb's brows furrowed. "That ain't ours." Behind them, Reuben stumbled on a root and nearly fell flat. "Sweet Mary, mother of—" "This ain't right, Elias." "This ain't just the mountain breathing cold. Something's out here." Elias didn't answer. He stood with arms crossed, watching the water, his face unreadable, carved from the same stone as the ridge. It was Micah who spotted it. "There," he said, and pointed. Something pale floated just beneath the reeds a dozen yards downstream. They ran, Caleb first, then Reuben, legs heavy, breath ragged. The creek twisted, narrowed, and then— Jonah! The boy's body had snagged on a cluster of rocks, his face twisted in death, lips curled back from teeth clenched, like he'd died biting something off, eyes wide open, pupils milked over, staring at nothing. His arms floated limp, shirt torn, chest rising and falling in rhythm with the water's lazy push, like he was still breathing, still hoping. Caleb pulled him free with a grunt. The stench hit first, sweet and foul, the kind that stuck in your throat and wouldn't let go. Reuben turned and vomited behind a tree. Micah stood silent, shell casing still in hand. Elias knelt by the boy's corpse, placed one calloused hand on the bloated chest. "Neck's bruised," he muttered. "Back of the skull's got a dent." Hard-won Reuben stepped closer, voice shaking like leaves in wind. "You see his face? Like he saw the goddamn devil himself. That ain't natural. That's a soul being ripped." "Don't start," Elias warned. But Reuben didn't stop. "The curse, Eli. It's real. He's the first, but he won't be the last. This mountain don't want us here." Elias stood up slow, wiped his hand on his duster. The creek whispered on, uncaring. Micah tossed the casing to him. Elias caught it mid-air, stared at the rusted brass. "This ain't no accident," he said flatly. "Somebody did this." Caleb's fists clenched. "You saying one of us?" "No," Elias said. "But someone's out here. Watching. Waiting." He turned to the men. "We bury him, then we ride. No splitting up, no goddamn ghost stories. Stay sharp. If this ain't nature, then it's worse." They dug shallow, soil hard and dry. Jonah went into the earth wrapped in his own bedroll. No words, no prayers, just dirt and the heavy silence of 5 men thinking about how close they'd come and how much closer it might get. As they packed up camp, the sky already warming with the coming day, Elias stood apart. He held the shell casing in his palm like a coin flipped by fate. His thumb pressed into the rim until his skin went white. "Rust don't grow this fast," he muttered. Caleb looked over. "What?" Elias held up the casing, eyes dark. "This was fired recently." "Too recently." Reuben's voice cracked behind him. "Then who the hell fired it?" Elias didn't answer right away. He stared toward the mountain, where shadows still clung like bruises to the rock. Then he said it, low and certain. "There's a human hand in this." The moon hung like a sickle above the mountain ridge, pale and sharp, casting silver slashes across the open prairie. The wind came down the pass in long, shuddering howls, like the earth itself was crying for what it had already lost. The fire crackled in the middle of the camp, struggling to stay lit against gusts that scattered embers like fireflies. The cattle shifted uneasily, forming tight knots, eyes reflecting firelight in jittery glints. Reuben hunched closer to the flames, clutching his coat like it could stop the cold from crawling up his spine. "You hear that?" he muttered. "That ain't just wind. That's crying, screaming, just like the old tales said. When blood hits this ground, the dead ain't quiet no more." Caleb, sitting on an upturned feed crate, snorted and spat into the fire. "Reuben, if you don't shut that cursed mouth, I swear I'll use your jawbone as kindling. Think I'm making it up? Ask the Apache. They say the mountain don't forget. You spill blood near its heart, and the spirits come calling." Elias didn't say a word. He stood beyond the firelight, watching the herd. The wind pressed his coat flat against his lean frame, and his eyes never left the darkness that pulsed just beyond the flicker of flame. The cattle were uneasy, not just restless, on edge, ears twitching, nostrils flaring, muscles tensed like wire. The smell of smoke, sweat, and dried manure hung thick, mixed with the sharp bite of night air. It wasn't right. Something in the dark was watching. Then came the low moan. Not human, not quite animal, somewhere in between. It slithered through the air, high and long and full of something ancient. Loss, rage, hunger. The herd broke. It started with one steer bolting, horns wide, slamming into another, then a chain reaction. Bodies surged, hooves dug up dirt, snorts turned into full-throated bellows. Caleb leapt up, drawing his revolver, firing a shot into the air. "Back! Back, you sons of bitches!" The blast echoed like thunder, and for a moment the cattle hesitated. But Reuben wasn't so lucky. A steer plowed toward him, wild-eyed, foam at the mouth, horns down. He screamed, scrambling backward, but too slow. The beast came within inches of gutting him before Elias stepped in, grabbed the smoldering end of a firebrand, and slammed it across the animal's snout. The steer reeled, eyes rolling, before barreling away into the dark. Reuben lay on his back, panting, chest heaving. "I told you," he gasped. "It ain't the cattle. It's them. Whatever's up there. They're stirring the herd." Micah knelt by the edge of the fire pit, eyes narrowed. "Shut up," he hissed. Then it hit. Thwack. An arrow slammed into the central tent pole, not fired from afar. It came in low, fast, silent, stuck there like a warning. The camp froze. Caleb spun toward the ridge, gun raised. "What the hell?" Elias moved slow, too calm. He yanked the arrow free, held it up to the firelight. The tip was stone, obsidian, chipped, cruel and sharp. Not decorative, not for hunting, for killing, Elias muttered. A moment later, Micah lifted his hand, pointing across the slope. "There," he said. A figure, tall, lean, cloaked in shadow, slid across the ridgeline like a whisper in flesh. No sound, no rustle, just presence. Shit, Caleb muttered. The figure vanished behind the rocks, gone, like smoke. No one spoke for a long moment. The fire crackled, the wind wailed again, and the mountain watched. The morning sun came up mean and unforgiving, already baking the dry prairie grass before the men had even finished pissing. Dust clung to their boots like regrets, and the heat wrapped itself around their necks like a noose. The wind was gone. Nothing moved but the flies. Elias was first to spot it. Blood. A thick pool of it, half-dried and glistening black in the early light, soaked into the sand near the edge of the trail. From it, a narrow smear stretched out, winding through the scrub and into the tree line. The marks weren't splatter, weren't tracks. They were a drag line. Something had been pulled. Micah crouched, eyes sharp. "This ain't no animal kill," he muttered. "Too clean, too straight. Something got taken, dragged, not torn." Caleb rubbed the back of his neck, sweat already trickling down into his collar. "Jesus H. Christ," he growled. "What now? Who the hell's playing butcher in our backyard?" Reuben hung back near the horses, arms crossed tight. "That's not natural. The mountain's claimin' tribute. First Jonah, now a beast. What's next, huh? Me?" Elias turned on him with fire in his voice. "Shut your damn mouth, Reuben. You talk like that again, I'll shut it for you." Reuben blinked, lips twitching but silent. The others looked to Elias, waiting. The trail stretched forward, across heat-shimmering plains, under that cursed mountain's shadow. The only way was forward. "We move," Elias said. "No stoppin', no splittin' up. Eyes sharp, hands near steel. If anything breathes wrong, you shoot it." The men grumbled, but they obeyed. The cattle were already jumpy. One was missing. Nobody saw it go. Just gone. No bellow, no panic, no broken fence. Vanished. Like the damn mountain had opened a mouth and swallowed it whole. As they rode, the heat worsened. The prairie cracked underfoot, and every breath tasted like ash. The sun bore down, merciless, turning backs into blistered leather. The cowboys took turns swearing at the sky, the dirt, the mountain, and each other. "Hotter than a whorehouse stove," Caleb snapped, tugging at his bandana. "Goddamn this trail. Goddamn that mountain. Goddamn Reuben's big mouth." "You ain't wrong," Micah muttered. Then Reuben pulled his horse short. "There," he said, voice hoarse. At the edge of a dry creek bed, sticking up from the ground like an accusation, was a spear, not old, not broken, not native. The shaft was smooth, polished, freshly whittled. The head was shaped of obsidian, cruelly curved, tied with sinew that hadn't even grayed yet. Caleb stepped forward, squinting. "This ain't Apache," he muttered. Micah nodded. "Too clean. Too new." Reuben crossed himself, lips moving without sound. "The mountain's taken what it wants, like a god." Jonah was the first. That steer was the second. It ain't done. Elias walked up to the spear and kicked the dirt around it. His jaw clenched tight. "This was placed," he said, "not thrown. Someone wanted us to see it." Caleb scanned the tree line, hand resting on his gun. "Why?" Elias didn't answer. He just stared toward the mountain, where the sun scorched the rocks until they seemed to ripple like a mirage. But the fear was real, and it was getting closer. They rode on in silence, dust swallowing their words. Somewhere in the heat behind them, the blood dried into the dirt, and ahead, the mountain waited. The cattle froze mid-step. A wave rippled through the herd. Muscles tightened, ears shot upright, hooves planted hard into the dried dirt. One steer gave a long, low grunt that rolled across the narrow trail, like a warning. Elias raised his arm. "Hold up!" The men halted, dust curling around their boots. The sun beat down with a vengeance, and the trail had tightened into a choke point between thorn brush and twisted cedar trunks. The air hung thick and still, but something felt wrong, off, like the land itself was holding its breath. Caleb wiped his brow and glanced at Elias. "What is it? Coyotes?" Elias didn't answer right away. He stepped forward slowly, eyes locked ahead. Micah crouched low near the brush, his hand tracing something taut between two bent branches. "There," he said. "Wire. Thin. Meant to trip." Reuben, sweating buckets, muttered, "You ever hear of ghosts laying wire?" "No," Elias growled, "but I sure as hell know men who do." They moved slower now, creeping forward as Elias sliced the tripwire with his knife. Not 30 paces ahead, partially buried in a patch of dust and dead weeds, was a pit, camouflaged with branches and cattle dung. The top layer had collapsed slightly, revealing sharpened stakes beneath. Micah whistled low. "That's a gut terror." "Hell of a way to die," Caleb muttered. "Look there." Elias pointed to the side of the trail, where deep gouges marked the ground. "Old wagon tracks. Someone's been through here. Long ago, maybe. Maybe not." They pushed further, navigating around the pit. But the tension didn't break. If anything, it wrapped tighter around their necks. The bushes were too quiet. No insects, no birds. The only sound was Reuben's raspy breath and the occasional snort from a nervous steer. Then it happened. The ground gave way with a sickening crunch. One of the bulls, one of the bigger ones near the front, let out a shriek that peeled the skin off their spines. The animal's front legs disappeared into the earth, and it thrashed violently, bellowing, eyes wild with terror. "Shit!" Caleb shouted. They rushed forward, but it was too late. The animal had stumbled into a secondary pit, hidden deeper along the trail. Its flank was shredded by the stakes, and dark blood pulsed into the soil as it kicked and screamed. "God damn it!" Elias snarled. "They set more!" The smell hit them a moment later. Rancid meat, thick and choking. A bloated carcass of another steer lay rotting just yards away, half sunk into the dirt, ribs picked clean by buzzards. It hadn't died today, maybe not even this week, but someone had left it there, as bait. Caleb stepped back, gagging. Holy hell, that's no trap for wild animals. That's a warning. "No ghost does this," Elias growled, jaw tight. "This ain't superstition. It's human, and they're close." Reuben wiped his mouth with a trembling hand. "You think it's bandits? Raiders?" Elias didn't answer immediately. He looked at the pit, at the wire, at the carefully laid spikes that had just torn their bolt to shreds. Then he looked at the edges of the brush, where the sunlight didn't quite reach. "This wasn't done for food," he said. "This wasn't done for survival." Micah stood. "Then why?" Elias turned toward him, eyes narrow and full of fury. "Because someone out here wants us scared." The trail ahead narrowed further, shadowed by thick brush and sun-bleached stone. The herd shuffled nervously behind them, their panic contagious, threatening another stampede if pushed too far. Elias drew his revolver, checked the cylinder, and hissed through clenched teeth, "This ain't spirits." This is some bastard with blood on his hands. And as they stepped forward, that stench of rot followed, like the land itself was rotting from the inside out. The fire was dying, licking low and bitter at the last crooked logs the wind had picked up, slapping cold against the canvas and stirring the ash into fits of coughing from the coals. Somewhere far off a coyote howled, but closer, far too close, was a silence so heavy it set teeth on edge. Caleb muttered curses under his breath, rifle in hand, boots crunching on dry gravel as he circled the camp. His eyes darted to every shadow. Every gust of wind sent his nerves twitching like raw muscle. "Damn this place," he hissed. "Damn this mountain. And damn every bastard who thinks this is funny." Behind the circle of wagons, Reuben sat with his back against a crate, flask to lips. He tipped back a long swig of cheap whiskey, the liquid biting hard, but not enough to burn out the fear in his gut. "You're gonna lose your teeth drinking like that," Caleb growled, passing him. "Better than losing my throat," Reuben mumbled, wiping his mouth. "Least the whiskey don't sneak up behind you." Micah said nothing. He sat near the dimming fire, sharpening his knife in slow, deliberate strokes. His gaze stayed locked on the darkness beyond the firelight, not watching for something, listening. Elias was on edge, pacing, arms folded tight across his chest. His eyes didn't blink much anymore. He looked like a man trying to hold a war inside his ribs. "You feel that?" he muttered. Caleb stopped, shoulders tense. "Feel what?" "Watchin' eyes," Elias said, voice dry as bone. "Same damn thing I felt right before Jonah vanished. Same chill in my spine." The wind howled through the gaps in the wagons. A lantern swung lightly, casting long dancing shadows over the cattle, who stood restless and snorting, tails flicking in nervous rhythm. Then, a snap. Every man froze. Caleb raised his rifle. Micah stood slowly, knife gleaming. Elias turned his head like a hound sniffing for blood. Even Reuben sobered in an instant, dropping his flask into the dirt. Footsteps, barely audible, just beyond the circle of firelight. Elias gestured low, hand slicing through the air. Caleb crept left, Micah right. Reuben stayed rooted, breathing hard, hand fumbling for his pistol. Then it came, a shape, swift and silent, darting past the edge of the camp. A figure cloaked in shadow, impossible to make out. Caleb fired, the shot cracking like thunder, but the shape was gone before the muzzle flash died. "Shit," Caleb yelled. "Too fast, too smooth." And then, a scream. Short, gurgled, choked off. They ran. Beyond the cattle, just past the second wagon, they found him. One of the younger cowhands. Name might have been Billy or Tom. Didn't matter now. His throat was cut from ear to ear, eyes wide open, mouth frozen mid-plea. Blood pooled beneath his head, soaking the dust, dark and sticky. The gash was clean, precise, not the work of beasts, the work of a hand that had done it before. The silence was absolute, the kind of silence that eats your voice if you try to scream. Then Elias broke it. He knelt beside the body, fists clenched tight, then stood up with a fury that shook the breath from the air. "You want war?" he growled. "Then, goddammit, I'll give you war." The wind carried the copper stink of blood through camp. It rolled across the sleeping cattle, through the noses of every man still breathing, turning stomachs and drying throats. This wasn't some ghost story. This wasn't superstition. This was a hunt, and they were the ones being hunted. The rock was cold beneath their bellies, biting through shirts and flesh as Elias, Caleb, and Micah crawled inch by inch along the narrow ledge. The moon above cast everything in a sick, pale glow, enough to see by, but too much to feel safe. Elias raised his hand, fingers tight, commanding silence. Caleb's breath came hot and fast, his rifle clenched so hard the knuckles turned white. Micah moved smoother, calmer, but his eyes flicked to every shadow, every dip in the rock. He paused. "There," he whispered. "Steel. Just caught the moon." They froze. Below them, halfway down the slope, something moved. A figure hunched in a dark shawl, face obscured, dragging the carcass of a cow, one of theirs, toward what looked like a hollowed-out crevice at the base of the stone wall. It moved with purpose, not scavenging, not running, like it belonged here. Elias's lips barely moved. "See that pit?" Micah nodded once. Caleb didn't answer. He was too busy setting the butt of his rifle firm into the crook of his shoulder, finger twitching near the trigger. The cloaked figure paused at the mouth of the pit. It whistled, a low, wet sound, not human. But it was answered. From inside the rock came scraping. Then more figures. 1, 2, 3, 5 more bodies emerged from the shadows, all cloaked, all moving with eerie coordination. They circled the cow's body, began pulling it into the crevice like ants dragging prey into a nest. Caleb growled, "What in the name of hell is that?" "Not ghosts," Elias muttered. "That's muscle." "Organized bandits?" Micah asked. "Cult," Caleb spat. "Don't matter," Elias said. "They took our beef. Took our man. Time we take something back." Then he fired. The rifle cracked like a whip in a canyon. The bullet hit stone, sparks spraying. The echo rolled out across the cliffs like thunder. One of the cloaked figures reeled back with a scream, tumbling into the pit. The rest scattered, but not for long. The shadows stirred, and from within the mountain, more came, not running, climbing. Figures, all draped in ragged hides, painted faces beneath their hoods, some masked in bone, some naked but for red handprints smeared across their torsos. They flowed from the crevices like rats, a dozen at least. Caleb fired again. Micah tossed a knife. It vanished into the dark. "Back!" Elias barked. "Back up the ridge! Move!" They scrambled, boots scraping on loose stone, lungs burning. Below, the swarm gathered, a writhing pack of shadows with glinting steel, snarls echoing like wolves. The wind picked up hard, howling through the narrow cliffs, carrying with it the stench of rot and blood. Above them, a crow screamed, then another. A whole flock burst into the air, black wings cutting across the pale moonlight like shards of night. Elias didn't look back. He didn't have to. He could feel the mountain waking up, and it was hungry. The wind came down the mountain like a goddamn banshee, screaming and clawing through canvas and bone. The fire went out in one breath, leaving behind nothing but the stink of ash and panic. The camp was swallowed in black, thick black. Not just the kind your eyes needed time to adjust to, but the kind that pressed in on your chest, made every breath feel like you were sucking on grave dirt. "God help us," Reuben whimpered from somewhere in the dark, voice barely louder than the wind. "The curse is here. It's wrapped around us." "Shut your goddamn mouth," Elias barked, voice cutting through the chaos like a whip. "Stand your ground." But the ground wasn't standing still. The earth trembled with hooves and screams. Cattle bellowed like demons, crashing into one another, eyes wide and rolling white in the dark. Something had spooked them hard, and not just the wind. Something in the wind. Caleb spun in the dark, rifle raised. "Who's out there? Show your damn face!" He got no answer. Just the sound of something tearing through the edge of the camp. A tent collapsed. A man screamed, then dragged. Not running, dragged. You could hear it. The heels scraping dirt, the hands clawing air, the throat choking on blood. Micah turned toward the sound, cold and silent as ever, knife drawn, eyes narrowed like he was listening through the dark. "One of ours just got taken." "Which one?" Elias shouted. "Don't matter," Caleb muttered. "They're coming." And they were. From all sides the night moved. Not just shadows, figures, dozens of them, maybe more, silent, fast. Some crawled low to the ground like dogs. Others stalked upright, too tall, too thin, like bones dressed in sackcloth. You could hear cloth flapping and metal clinking, a sound sharp and steady, like tools tapping stone. "Back to back," Elias ordered. "Circle up, now!" But the camp was chaos. Tents collapsed, barrels overturned. Cattle broke through ropes, stampeding into the dark. One of them crashed through the supply wagon, sending sparks flying as hooves struck metal. Reuben tripped over a rope, fell hard. He didn't get up. A shape loomed over him. Too fast, too smooth. Micah threw his knife dead on. It passed clean through the thing. No cry, no stumble. Just a hiss of air, and it vanished back into the black. "Goddamn ghosts," Caleb growled, firing blind into the dark. One shot, two, three. Each echo lost in the roar of madness. Elias grabbed Reuben, yanked him to his feet. "You want to live, you move." All around the camp fell apart. Supplies stolen or stomped. Men dragged off screaming. Cattle screaming louder. It wasn't a fight anymore. It was a feeding. Something was feasting on fear, on confusion, on the goddamn camp. And just when they thought it couldn't get worse, it did. From somewhere deep in the mountain, through the cracks of stone in the belly of the wind, came a sound unlike any other. Clang! Metal on metal. Sharp, rhythmic, unrelenting. Clang! Like a hammer against steel. Clang! Coming in steady, slow beats. Not chaotic, not frantic. Deliberate. Elias froze, heart hammering. "What the hell is that?" Micah didn't answer. Caleb lowered his rifle. "That ain't no animal." From behind them, Reuben whispered, "That's the sound of chains being forged. In hell." And suddenly, even the monsters in the dark seemed to pause, as if they were waiting, too. The dawn broke, gray and bitter, painting the jagged slopes in cold ash light. Fog clung low to the rocks, like a dying breath that refused to leave this cursed place. Elias crouched near a thorny bush, eyes locked on something barely visible, a torn scrap of cloth, blood-stained, tangled in the dry thorns like a final scream that got caught halfway out. He didn't speak right away, just reached down, picked it up between two calloused fingers, and held it up. Reuben's voice cracked behind him. "What is that?" Caleb snorted. "What the hell you think it is? It ain't feathers, that's for damn sure." Elias said nothing. The cloth was canvas, sturdy stuff, like what the crew wore, but this piece was shredded, soaked through with blood now dried rusty brown. He turned it over. Faint stitching on the edge. A name. Jonah, Elias muttered. Jesus Christ, Reuben whispered, starting to cross himself. He was taken, torn. No, Elias cut him off, voice firm like gravel under boot. He was hunted. Micah, who'd been walking the ridge just above, whistled low and pointed downhill. Wagon tracks. Deep ones, too clean to be old. Elias looked where he pointed. Sure enough, twin ruts carved into the packed dirt, cutting through the slope like scars. Not fresh, but not faded either. Not ghost prints, Caleb growled. Someone with wheels. And blood, Elias added, nodding toward the cloth. A man bled here. A man was taken by other men. They moved fast after that, skirting down the rubble-strewn incline, rifles drawn, eyes sweeping. The mist was thinning, but it still hung low, shrouding the ridges like veils pulled over dead faces. Every few paces, another clue, hoof prints, a broken twig, a splash of dark on stone that wasn't dirt. Then in the distance, a bellow, faint but clear, a cow, alive. Jesus, we're not alone out here, Caleb spat. Shh, Elias hissed, raising a hand. They moved in tighter formation now, boots crunching on shale, every sound too loud. The air was heavy, cold despite the sun fighting to break through. The kind of cold that crept into your bones, not from weather, but from something else. From the knowing. From the truth that maybe this wasn't about curses or spirits. That maybe the devil had boots and thumbs like the rest of them. They reached a jagged outcrop, half sunken into the hillside like a broken jaw. Below, a narrow gap opened between the rocks, shadowy and steep. The cow's bellow came again, from inside. Reuben stepped back. That's a cave. No shit, Caleb snapped. You want to go first, choir boy? I'll go, Elias said, already lowering himself toward the mouth. The others followed, hesitant but drawn by something deeper than orders. Rage, fear, curiosity with teeth. Inside, the walls were damp and close, the air stale. Moss clung to the stone like old secrets. Then Elias paused. Another scrap of fabric, this one newer, blue, fringed. He picked it up. Blood again. God damn it, he growled. This is human. Torn, not chewed. Look at the edges, jagged. Caleb leaned in. What are you saying? I'm saying it ain't beasts. Then what is it? Elias looked back at him, eyes sharp like flint. It's people. Sick, twisted sons of bitches. Micah didn't flinch. That explains the spear. The traps, the dragging. They're hunting. Reuben turned green. For what? Elias held up the cloth again. Not for gold. Not for cattle. For us. Then, deep in the cave, the sound came. Clink, clink, clink. Chains dragging on stone. Slow, rhythmic. Like something being pulled. Or someone. Then, a metallic rattle. Heavier. Almost purposeful. The group froze, breath caught like animals that just smelled the butcher. Micah whispered, "That ain't no ghost." And Reuben, voice barely audible, said, "It was never a curse." Elias nodded grimly, eyes fixed ahead. No, just a damn good story. To keep folks from poking their noses where they shouldn't. Another sound followed, a low groan, not cattle, human. Then came a whisper from the dark, rough, wet. You shouldn't be here. Night fell heavy, thick as old oil. The sky turned to coal, and not even the moon dared peek past the jagged silhouette of the black mountain. The wind had stilled, But it didn't bring peace, only silence, the kind that meant something was watching. From the crack of stone ahead, a red glow bled out, pulsing against the rocks like a slow heartbeat. Reuben's breath came ragged behind them. "That ain't no fire for cookin'," he whispered. "That's hell itself, waitin' to boil souls." Elias didn't respond. He crouched low on the ridge above the opening, eyes fixed on the glowing gap below. Caleb lay beside him, eyes twitching between the mouth of the cave and the loaded rifle in his hands. Micah stood slightly back, pressed to a tree, his blade drawn and lips sealed. They had tracked the noises, the dragging, the clang of iron. What they expected, ghosts, beasts, maybe cannibals, none of it quite prepared them for what they now saw. They waited, watched, and then the truth showed its face. Figures emerged from the glow, not demons, not phantoms. Men, ragged, muscled, covered in soot and sweat. Some wore pieces of old military uniform, patched over with leather and feathers. Others were bare-chested, faces smeared with charcoal, symbols painted in crude streaks across skin and metal. Blacksmiths, bandits. One hoisted a hammer, swinging it hard onto a glowing ingot atop a stone anvil. Sparks burst upward like fireflies. Another shoveled coal into a makeshift furnace dug into the cave wall, its flames licking the ceiling like a dragon's breath. Further back, 3 others dragged heavy canvas sacks across the floor, gold dust trailing from the seams like breadcrumbs. One man dumped the sack's contents into a wooden box. Nuggets, coins, jewelry melted and reformed. Caleb's eyes narrowed. Gold. Goddamn gold. Micah muttered. They're mining, smelting, but not like prospectors. This is an operation. Then one of the bastards, stocky, half his beard burned off, threw his head back and laughed. "The curse works better than guns," he hollered, voice echoing through the cavern. "Ain't no lawman ever come this close, no cowpoke, no traitor. They hear the tale of the haunted peak, and they run like rabbits." Another voice joined in, gravelly, laced with whiskey. "Hell, even them Injuns don't dare step past the river. We owe this curse a damn toast." The men erupted in laughter, high and sharp like blades scraping bone. Elias didn't laugh. He didn't blink. He just whispered, "God damn, they made it up. The whole damn curse." Reuben, crouched behind a boulder, gasped softly. "You mean all this time we've been running from shadows?" Elias shook his head, voice low and grim. "Not shadows. Lies." Painted with blood and fear, Caleb's grip tightened on his rifle, raven hollow. "It's them, ain't it?" Micah nodded. "That symbol on the crates, same as the one carved in that dead man's chest." The boulder shifted under them, a stone dislodged. One of the men below paused, head snapping toward the ridge. "Shit," Elias hissed. "Down, quiet." They pressed themselves flat against the earth. The man peered into the dark, then grunted, turned back to his work. A moment passed. Another. The glow of the forge pulsed again, red and hungry. Elias exhaled slowly. Now they knew. It wasn't ghosts tearing through their camp. It wasn't a mountain cursed by ancient spirits. It was a crew of murdering sons of bitches, holed up in the hills, hiding behind myths, smelting stolen gold, and feeding the legend with blood to keep outsiders far the hell away. "Bastards dressed in fear," Caleb muttered. Elias nodded. "And now we peel the masks off." He looked at Micah. "Tomorrow, we end this." From inside the cave the hammer rang again. Clang! Like a war drum. The mountain was no longer a mystery. It was a goddamn fortress. The first shot cracked the dawn like a thunderclap. Then came the howling. Dark figures spilled from the ridge, fast, silent, low to the ground like wolves that had waited too long to feed. Black scarves masked their faces, rifles raised, boots pounding earth as dry grass caught fire beneath them. Elias barely had time to yell, "Down! We're hit! Move!" The camp exploded in smoke and chaos. Cattle screamed, bolting in every direction, their hooves tearing open the ground like artillery fire. The air turned into hell, thick with smoke, dust, and the copper stench of blood. Elias fired back instinctively, dropping one of the bastards mid-charge. The man crumpled like wet laundry, his rifle clattering beside him. Another rushed from the left, hatchet raised. Elias rolled and put 2 bullets through his chest. The body spun and fell hard into the dust. Reuben screamed, not from fear this time, but fury. He stood behind the overturned chuck wagon, eyes wide, rifle trembling in both hands. A black-clad raider lunged toward him. Bang! The man jerked backward, a clean hole in his neck. Reuben stared, eyes as big as dinner plates. I got him," he yelled, half disbelieving. Micah didn't answer. He was too busy gutting a son of a bitch with his knife, blade twisting in the ribs. Another came at him from behind, but Elias cut that one down with a single shot. Then the tide turned. 3 masked men jumped Caleb at once. He fought like a damn bull, fists flying, gun clubbing one across the jaw. But there were too many. They tackled him hard, pinning him down. "Elias!" he bellowed. Elias turned too late. One of them had a knife now, long and dirty, pressing into Caleb's neck. Blood welled under the blade's edge. "Stop!" Elias roared, rifle raised, breath ragged. "You drop that blade or you'll what?" The bastard sneered, pulling back his hood. The man was older, scarred, teeth stained, a raven tattoo inked across his neck. He grinned like the devil. Welcome to Raven Hollow. Behind him, the smoke cleared just enough to see the others falling back. The ambush wasn't meant to kill them all. It was a message. The bastard with the knife pressed harder. Caleb flinched but didn't cry out. "You kill him," Elias growled, "and I'll burn every damn inch of that mountain to ash." The man laughed, blade still hovering. "No," he said, "you'll come to us. All of you, just like the others. You'll walk into that hollow with your hands raised, thinking maybe, just maybe, you'll make it out." Then he leaned close to Caleb's ear and whispered something Elias couldn't hear. Caleb's eyes widened, fury and fear twisted into one. Then, smoke bomb, a hiss, a flash, and the bastard vanished behind the curtain. Elias fired blind, missed. Reuben coughed hard, ash choking him. "What the hell was that?" Micah pulled him down just before another round of bullets tore through the wagon wheel above their heads. Then quiet. No more yelling, no more gunfire. Only the distant sound of hooves. The cattle were gone, scattered like dice across the prairie. And Caleb? He sat up slowly, blood dripping from his neck, eyes burning. "Next time," he said, voice hoarse, "I'm taking one of those sons of bitches with me." Elias crouched beside him. "They wanted us alive. That ain't a favor, it's a warning." Micah stood nearby, watching the smoke drift east. "They're leading us somewhere." Elias nodded. Raven Hollow. Reuben, still shaking, looked at his rifle. I shot one right through the damn throat. Caleb cracked a bloody grin. Hell, Reuben, didn't think you had it in you. I didn't, Reuben whispered. But I do now. From far off a raven cried, once, sharp, cruel, and the wind changed. The cave stank of smoke, sweat, and old blood. Flames danced along the stone walls, casting jagged shadows like demons writhing in silence. And then he stepped out. Silas Crow. He walked slow, deliberate, the kind of man who didn't need to shout to be feared. Tall, lean, dressed in black with a coat that looked like it had soaked up every kind of sin west of the Rockies. His eyes, cold steel, locked onto Elias like a nail pinning hide to barnwood. Well now, he drawled, voice smooth and rotten like fruit just about to go bad. Ain't you the stubborn son of a bitch that keeps dodging my dogs? Elias said nothing, just squared his jaw and stared. Behind them the fire snapped. Caleb, bruised but standing, leaned heavy on a post. Micah knelt nearby, face unreadable. Reuben wasn't in sight. Maybe dead, maybe hiding. At this point, it didn't matter. Silas walked a slow circle around Elias. You know what I love about this place? He said, arms wide. It's honest. Ain't no law up here, no church bells, no preachers whisperin' about sins while countin' their silver. He stopped beside a heap of something wrapped in canvas. With a quick yank, he pulled the cloth free, revealing bones, stained and broken. Bits of clothing still clung to them, a rusted boot, a badge. Marshall Tompkins, Silas said, like reading off a damn menu, came sniffin' like a dog. Thought he'd found justice. He kicked the skull aside like trash. Turns out, he continued, smiling now, he found the curse. Elias's voice came low and steady. You made that curse up. Silas leaned close, breath thick with tobacco and rot. Damn right I did. Ghosts are cheap labor. One story told right can keep out more lawmen than 50 rifles ever could. He gestured around the cavern. Stacks of gold bricks shimmered in the firelight. Nuggets, melted chains, coins from a dozen states, all stolen, all bathed in blood. This ain't just a mine, cowboy, Silas said. This is a kingdom. And I'm the goddamn king. Elias's fists clenched. You're a thief with a body count. Silas grinned. Correction. I'm a rich thief with a body count. And you're my newest little chip in the game. He pulled his revolver and pressed it hard against Elias's temple. You and your boys wandered too far. You seen too much. Now I gotta decide, do I bury you in pieces or parade you around like a dog on a chain? Elias didn't flinch. Either way, I'll haunt your sorry ass. Silas chuckled. You ain't scary, old man. You're just next. The room tensed. Micah shifted slightly, too slightly for most to notice, but Silas noticed. He turned his gun. You, what are you looking at? Micah didn't blink. Then, a flick of the wrist. A small stone flew from Micah's hand, fast as a bullet, and struck a lantern behind Silas. The glass shattered, oil spilled, and the fire jumped like it had been waiting. Whoosh! Flames climbed the side of the cave wall. Raiders shouted. One tripped over a crate. Another tried to stomp out a smoldering sack of powder. Screams filled the cave as chaos erupted. Elias moved. With a snarl, he shoved into Silas's chest, knocking the revolver sideways. The shot fired wide, smashing into the rock. Elias tackled him hard, fist slamming into Silas's jaw, the crack of bone loud in the smoke. Micah was already moving, blade out, slicing through a rope that bound Caleb's hands. Silas fought dirty, bit, clawed, grabbed a shard of bone and stabbed it into Elias's shoulder. Blood sprayed. Elias grunted but didn't let go. He wrapped his arm around Silas's throat and squeezed. "Go," he shouted. "Get the hell out, now!" Caleb dragged Elias off, both stumbling. Micah led the way, ducking under falling beams, through the flames, past the corpses. Behind them, Silas knelt, coughing, one eye swollen shut, face twisted with rage. "You think this is over?" he bellowed. "You're in my hollow!" The fire roared louder, and somewhere, in the cracks of that cursed mountain, the gold began to melt. The air was thick with smoke and screams. Caleb roared, launching himself like a wild bull. He slammed into one of Silas's men, knocking them both to the ground in a tangle of fists, elbows, and rage. The man tried to stab, but Caleb bit down hard on his hand. Crunch, and the bastard shrieked, dropping the blade. Micah moved like a shadow behind him, pulling a thin, wicked knife from his boot. With silent precision, he jammed it under the ribs of a raider lunging toward Reuben. The man gasped, coughed blood, and collapsed. Elias stood tall, back to the flame-lit cave wall, eyes sweeping the chaos with cold focus. "Get to the shaft," he barked. "Now!" But it wasn't that easy. The tunnel had become a war zone. Gunshots echoed like thunder. The cavern's tight walls turned every blast into a deafening scream. Sparks flew from ricochets. Men fought hand to hand, slipping on blood-slick stone. The glow of fire painted everything in hellish red and orange. Reuben, clutching a pickaxe like a club, swung wide at anything that moved. He didn't aim, he didn't care. He screamed more than he struck, but somehow he stayed alive. One of the masked bastards lunged at Elias. The old man sidestepped, grabbed the man by his collar, and shoved a revolver under his chin. Blam! Brain and bone sprayed the low ceiling. "Micah!" Elias yelled. "We're running out of time!" Micah had already spotted the crack forming along the western wall. The fire was spreading faster now. Oil from broken lanterns licking at crates and powder sacks. "We bring this whole goddamn place down," Micah said. Elias didn't hesitate. He yanked a lantern off the wall, smashed the glass, and hurled it into the nearest stack of crates. Whoomph! Flames erupted like a dragon's breath. Heat rolled through the cavern. Screams changed pitch, from rage to panic. One of the supports cracked, a massive being groaned, then snapped. Rock started falling. A chunk slammed down inches from Reuben's head. He squealed and scrambled forward on all fours, covered in soot and blood, eyes wide with madness. "Go!" Elias shouted. "Move your ass!" Behind them, Caleb was still fighting. Fists bruised, shirt soaked in blood that wasn't all his. A raider slammed a board across his back. Caleb spun, rammed his shoulder into the man's gut, tackled him to the ground, and broke his nose with one savage punch. Another blow came from the side, a crowbar to Caleb's ribs. He staggered. Another hit, this time across the jaw. He went down. But as Elias turned to rush to him, Caleb grinned up through bloodied teeth, laughing like a lunatic. "I told you sons of bitches," he growled, coughing blood. "I ain't dying in the dark." Then the ceiling groaned loud enough to shake the bones. Micah grabbed Elias by the arm. "We go now, or we never go." Elias cursed under his breath and nodded. He fired one last shot toward the back of the cave, a warning, or maybe a farewell, and turned to run. Reuben was already halfway up the shaft, slipping, sobbing, bleeding. Micah followed, calm as ever, like a wolf climbing out of a pit. Elias climbed last, his shoulder leaking red, his hand still clenched around his revolver. Behind them, the cave roared, stone splitting, fire screaming, metal clanging as beams gave way. And Caleb? His laugh echoed up the tunnel, loud and ragged, until it was swallowed by the crash of falling rock. The sky bled red. Dawn crept up like a slow-burning fire behind the mountain ridge, casting long shadows over the rubble-strewn clearing. The collapsed mouth of the cave still smoldered, dust curling through cracks like the breath of something dying, or something not quite dead. Blood stained the earth in dark patches, and right there, in the heart of it, Elias stood, shoulders squared, chest rising and falling like bellows. His gun hung low in one hand, blade in the other. Across from him stood Silas Crow, shirt torn, lips split, eyes gleaming with fury and madness. His revolver was trained right at Elias, cocked and steady. Caleb knelt nearby, barely conscious, face slick with blood and soot. One arm dangled useless. He gritted his teeth but managed a hoarse, "Finish it." "Shoot that son of a bitch!" Reuben screamed, waving a rusted rifle with shaking hands. "Blow his damn head off!" Silas chuckled darkly, wiping a smear of blood from his mouth. "This your army now, Elias? One bleedin' corpse and a drunk who can't piss straight?" Elias didn't rise to the bait. His gaze stayed locked, calm as still water. "You're done, Crow," Silas spat in the dirt. "Nah, I'm just getting warmed up." He fired. Elias ducked left, the bullet grazing his shoulder. Pain flared, but he didn't stop. He surged forward, shoulder first, slamming into Silas with the force of a battering ram. The two men tumbled into the dirt, fists flying. 1, 2, 3 punches. Elias caught Silas in the jaw, then took a hard elbow to the ribs. Silas rolled, trying to mount, but Elias bucked him off. The revolver skidded into the dust. Silas went for a knife. Elias went barehanded. They met in a grapple, knees grinding into gravel, forearms locked. Silas stabbed, caught Elias in the side, but Elias didn't flinch. He grabbed Silas's wrist, forced the blade down, until blood streamed from both their arms. Then, a roar. Not human. A bull, wild-eyed and blood-flecked, tore through the smoke, one of theirs, freed in the chaos. It charged without aim, blind with panic and rage. Silas turned too late. Crack! The beast's horn caught him in the hip, lifting him clean off the ground. He screamed, twisting in the air, and landed hard at the crumbling edge of the cave mouth, right where the earth still trembled from the earlier blasts. Elias staggered upright. Silas, gasping, tried to push himself up, but the ground beneath him shifted. The mountain groaned, the ledge cracked, and with one last howl of rage, Silas Crow slipped, falling backward into the dark, hungry throat of the ruined cavern. Rocks followed, dust exploded upward. Gone, just like that. Elias stood over the edge, heaving breaths, watching until the dust settled. Behind him, the others began to stir. Micah limped out from behind a fallen cart, clothes torn, knife in hand. Reuben helped Caleb to sit upright, dabbing his brow with a filthy bandana. And then, the mountain rumbled again. Stronger, deeper, a groaning, grinding roar, like the gods themselves dragging stone across the earth. "Shit," Elias muttered. Rocks began to rain down again. The ridge above shook loose. Birds scattered, cows bellowed in terror. The whole damn mountain was coming apart. "Move!" Elias bellowed. "This place is done!" The mountain screamed, not with voice or vengeance, but with a terrible groan of stone splitting from stone, of earth giving way to itself. Black Ridge, the cursed spine of the west, began to collapse inward, choking the sky with dust and fire. Elias didn't look back. "Drive 'em!" he roared, his voice hoarse, shredded by smoke and grit. The cattle, panicked beyond reason, surged forward down the narrow mountain pass, hooves thundering like the judgment of God. The ground shook beneath them, but they didn't care. They ran like the devil had grown teeth behind them. Elias swung his arm in circles, shouting hoarsely, eyes squinting through the dust. "Micah! Hold the rear! Caleb, on the left!" Micah, face streaked with soot, nodded once and fell back, eyes scanning the ridge for falling rock. His horse had thrown a shoe 2 hours ago, so he was running now, boots pounding stone, lungs burning. Caleb staggered along the left flank, blood-soaked but standing, a pistol clutched in one hand like it was the only thing keeping him upright. And Reuben was crying. The big bastard sobbed as he ran, clutching a calf under one arm like a sack of flour, eyes wild, teeth chattering. "Gonna die, Elias. We're all gonna die." "Shut up and move," Elias bellowed, "or I'll shoot you myself." The pass narrowed, the cliff walls pressing in, dust thick enough to chew. A boulder the size of a wagon wheel slammed down behind them, missing Micah by a foot. Half the herd made it through. The rest weren't so lucky. A deep crack opened along the edge of the trail. The rock gave way with a wet, grinding sound. 20, maybe 30 head of cattle toppled screaming into the abyss. Dust rose like steam from boiling water. Caleb stopped short, watching them fall. Elias grabbed his collar. "Ain't no good staring. They're gone." Caleb blinked, nodded once, and stumbled after the rest. Ahead the sunlight broke through the haze, slicing golden lines across the chaos. The survivors burst from the pass like water from a broken dam, their coats slick with sweat, sides heaving. The flat land opened up like a promise, and behind them, Black Ridge caved in. The mountain folded into itself with a sound like thunder breaking its own back. The gaping maw of the cave, the blood pit where the Raven Hollow gang had ruled and killed, was swallowed whole. Dust billowed 100 feet high. Stones the size of oxen crashed and tumbled, obliterating everything. Gone. Everything gone. Elias slowed his horse, pulling up to the edge of the ridge, and turned. He looked back, not in regret, not in fear, but in finality. The mountain that had haunted legends, cursed lives, swallowed men and gold and dreams, now lay still, dead. The curse had been men, and now the mountain had eaten them. Caleb limped up beside him, mouth dry. "You think it's done?" Elias didn't answer for a moment. He just watched the dust settle, the clouds turn gold under the morning sun. Then he muttered, "She's buried her own sins. Let's get the hell out of here." Micah brought up the rear, leading the shrunken but living herd forward. Reuben, still crying, whispered something like a prayer. And Black Ridge, once full of ghosts, said nothing at all. The valley opened up in gold. The sun stretched wide across the land, casting long shadows behind the ragged men and the tired cattle. The herd moved slowly now, bones showing under hide, hooves dragging. But they were alive. That was more than most could say. Dusty Creek lay ahead, small, dusty, unremarkable, but to them it looked like heaven. The faint outline of roofs shimmered in the heat haze, the promise of water, rest, maybe even a warm bed, or at least a wooden floor that didn't shift or groan or bleed beneath your back. No one spoke. They had survived. But it didn't feel like winning. They set up a small fire under a cottonwood tree near the edge of the field. The cattle grazed, slow, heads down, tails flicking flies. The morning breeze was soft, the first real peace in what felt like weeks. Micah poured tin cups of coffee. No one asked him to. No one thanked him. The bitter black liquid steamed in silence. Caleb sat on a rock, arm in a sling, bruises dark under his eyes. His lips were split and his breathing raspy. Still he sipped, didn't complain. Reuben huddled by the fire, hat clutched tight in his calloused hands. His eyes were puffy, red-rimmed. He hadn't said a word since the mountain came down. Not one of his usual ramblings or whimpers. Just quiet tears and the occasional soft whisper. Names of people back home, maybe. Or just prayers. Micah sat apart, staring off at nothing. His face gave away nothing, as always. But he wasn't sharpening his knife or watching the trees like usual. He just sat. Still, like a man who'd emptied himself out and found nothing worth refilling. And Elias, he stood, back to the fire, coffee in one hand, the other shoved deep in his coat pocket. He stared out across the valley, at the shape on the horizon. Black Ridge, still there, faint and distant, but not gone. The peak loomed, a jagged shadow against the sky. Quiet now, still, but not forgotten. Elias raised the cup to his lips, took a long, bitter sip, then muttered, "Ain't no devils in that damn mountain." Never were. No one replied. He took another sip, then added, low and grim, "Only men. Greedy, lying bastards with a pickaxe and a made-up ghost story." Micah gave the slightest nod. Caleb chuckled, just once, then winced and held his ribs. Reuben sniffed and muttered, "I want to go home." Elias finished his coffee, then tossed the dregs into the dirt. He looked down at the muddy splash, then back up at the mountain in the distance. "I reckon there'll be another fool someday," he said, voice calm. "Some son of a bitch hungry enough to believe in gold and ghosts. Maybe he'll bring a bigger gun. Maybe he'll come with a preacher or a map." He paused, "But that mountain don't give a damn. She'll bury him just the same." A gust of wind stirred the fire. Ash danced like tiny ghosts across the dirt. Elias turned to the men. "Well, we ain't rich, but we ain't dead." Micah nodded. Caleb raised his cup in mock salute. Reuben just wiped his eyes. They sat in silence for a while longer, the fire crackling low, the cattle breathing slow behind them, and the mountain stood quiet, far off, watching, waiting. Spoken directly to the audience at the end of the video, when the dust settles and the last bullet's fired. What's left ain't gold, it's truth. There was never a curse, just men who wore fear like a mask and used it to cover their greed. In the end, Elias didn't just lead cattle through hell. He uncovered the devil dressed as man. And maybe that's the real lesson here. It's not the mountain that curses people. It's the hunger inside us that does. Ask yourself, how far would you go for gold? If this story made you pause and think, drop a fire in the comments. Where are you watching from? Let us know your town or state below. Got a different take? We'd love to hear it. Scroll down and speak your mind. And hey, if you crave raw, untamed Western stories like this, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next tale from True Wild West Stories. Because the Wild West wasn't just a place, it was a test of every man's soul.